Hey, you. You're finally awake.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. The Game Boy Advance wasn't just home to platformers and puzzlers. It quietly became a haven for some of the best RPGs of the early 2000s. Whether you love tactical battles, turn-based adventures or monster collecting epics, the GBA had something for everyone. In this video we're going to be diving into what I think are the best RPGs. Yes, this is my top 7 list, and I guarantee you it's going to annoy some of you because you're going to go, you're completely wrong, and that's fine. You can disagree with me. It's all good fun. This is just my list. I want to hear your list. So put your top 7s, 5s, whatever in the comments below. I want to hear it. Now, before we get into my top 7 RPGs for the GBA, if you think I deserve it, please hit that like and subscribe button for more content. There's the weekly podcast where this week we're covering Pokemon Pinball for the Game Boy Color, and we've got a $1 a month Patreon where you can join the Smut Squad and get additional content. Let's get into it, shall we? My top 7 RPGs for the Game Boy Advance. In number 7, Tactics Ogre, Knights of Lodis. Released in 2001 by Atlas, Tactics Ogre, The Knights of Lodis is a standout tactical RPG that emerged late in the Game Boy Advance lifecycle. It served as a prequel to Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together, and dives into the ideological conflicts and complex motivations of its characters. Now, the game was developed by Quest Corporation, a studio known for pioneering the strategy RPG genre. And I have to say, when I found this at the time, I didn't know about this when I was playing the GBA. It was only through doing the podcast it suddenly turned up and I went, hang on, what? There was a prequel? Hang on, what? It looks like Final Fantasy Tactics Advance? Hang on, what? It's on the Game Boy Advance? And I smashed the game very quickly, and I loved it. The story centers on Alphonse Loaher, I think I butchered that, I'm sorry, I completely butchered that name. A young officer in the elite order of the Sacred Flame, sent by the Lodis Empire to the island of Ovis. Initially loyal and unquestioning, Alphonse becomes increasingly aware of the Empire's cruelty and manipulation. What begins as a mission to suppress rebellion evolves into a philosophical journey that forces players to question authority, loyalty, and morality. What sets The Knight of Lodis apart is its multiple endings, influenced by choices that deeply affect Alphonse's fate and the world around him. It's one of the rare GBA titles that offers this level of narrative branching, and I'm not going to spoil the ending of this game because you might want to play it, but when I got to the ending I went, holy shit, oh my god, because I played Tactics Ogre. Leave me alone, that's what it was. Combat in Tactics Ogre is turn-based and takes place on an isometric grid, where height, terrain, and facing direction influence the success of attacks and spells. The game offers an extensive class system, allowing players to evolve characters into knights, archers, wizards, and even more specialised units. Each class brings unique tactics, and mastering their synergy is essential to success. Equipment, magic, and unit placement all play crucial roles, offering a level of depth that few handheld games have matched. Character development is another strong point. Units gain experience through battle, and you shape their progression by changing their classes or assigning emblems, rewards earned by fulfilling certain conditions in combat. These emblems can enhance stats or unlock hidden potential. The system encourages experimentation and rewards creative strategy, ensuring that every player's army looks and performs differently. And that's the whole thing. You can play this game 20 times or 50 times compared to a friend, and your armies are going to look completely different. And that's the great thing about this. Want to have 2 white mages? Fine. Want to have no white mages? Fine. You do what you want to do. It's great. Visually, the game utilizes detailed sprite work and finely drawn backgrounds that capture the grit and somber tone of its world. The muted colour palette, although constrained by the GBA's limitations, works in the game's favour, emphasising its serious narrative themes. Character portraits are expressive and distinctive, helping to ground the story's emotional beats. The soundtrack blends solemn orchestral tracks with tense battle themes. The music enhances every major plot development and climactic battle, conveying emotion in a way that elevates the story beyond the limitations of its hardware. It's one of the most understated yet effective scores on any RPG of the system. It is pretty good. Like, I'm not gonna lie, the wife's trying to talk to me and the whole way through I've just got this soundtrack going on the background. Upon release, critics praised the title for its ambition and maturity. While some found the steep learning curve and slower pace to be a barrier, fans of tactical RPGs embraced it for its intricate design and moral complexity. It garnered a cult following and is often listed as one of the most underrated GBA games ever released. Despite being a critical darling, the game didn't receive a sequel on the GBA or a remake, which has only added to its mystique. Copies of the cartridge have become collector's items, and fans continue to campaign for a modern port of a spiritual successor, and its influence can be seen in later entries in Tactics Ogre and Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. What makes Tactics Ogre, The Knights of Lodis so special is its commitment to challenging the player, not just strategically, but morally and intellectually. In a landscape filled with light-hearted RPGs, it dared to be serious, philosophical, and hauntingly real. For those willing to invest its intricacies, it offers one of the most rewarding experiences the Game Boy Advance has to offer. Number 6. Pokmon Emerald. Now, Pokemon was always going to make an appearance here. Pokemon Emerald was released in 2004 and is a definitive version of the third generation of Pokemon games. Building upon the foundation set by Ruby and Sapphire, Emerald introduced new story elements, updated mechanics, and polished the gameplay to make the ultimate Hoenn adventure. It's often cited as the pinnacle of the GBA's monster-catching offerings. Yeah, I love Emerald. It's a quality title. I wasn't too much of a fan of Ruby and Sapphire, I found them a bit lackluster, but this Emerald version definitely pushed the boundaries. Emerald tells a similar story as the original games of a young trainer who sets off on a journey across the tropical Hoenn region, not to become champion, but to stop two warring villainous teams, Team Aqua and Team Magma. The addition in this story was putting in the legendary Rayquaza, who is a balancing force to Kyogre and Groudon, giving the plot a mythical scale that was missing from the original pair. Because basically Rayquaza comes out and says to Kyogre and Groudon, "Oi, you two, go back to fucking bed, stop being dickheads." That's basically the story of this. It's what happens. It's like two little kids having an argument and mum comes in and goes, "Oi!" Is basically how the plot's summarised in the end. One of the standout additions here was the Battle Frontier, a post-game challenge that pushed players' skill to the limit with diverse facilities and advanced rule sets. The Battle Frontier was arguably the most in-depth endgame content seen in the franchise at the time, and I spent a lot of time here. Gameplay was classic Pokemon with subtle enhancements. Double battles became more prominent, held items had a large strategic role, and abilities added more strategies to how Pokemon performed in battle. The addition of animated sprites also brought to life each encounter. Graphically, Emerald uses the GBA's hardware efficiently, delivering colourful environments and dynamic battle effects. The new animations of Pokemon during combat gave it a touch of personality, making the game feel more alive compared to its predecessors. Multiplayer functionality was robust thanks to the GBA link cable. Players could battle or trade with friends, and with the GameCube connection they could even transfer Pokemon to games like Pokemon Colosseum. This interconnectivity made the experience feel expansive beyond the handheld screen, and don't you worry, I had Pokemon Colosseum, although not anymore, which I'm an idiot for. Critically, Emerald was lauded for its improvements over Ruby and Sapphire, particularly the inclusion of both villain teams into the story and the Battle Frontier. Fans appreciated the more complete package, and it remains one of the most beloved entries in the series. Its legacy is considerable. Emerald set the bar for what an enhanced edition of a Pokemon game could be, influencing future titles like Platinum and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, and to some, it's often regarded as the most refined GBA Pokemon game. Even today, it stands out as balance between accessible design and deeper gameplay. For many fans, Emerald is the game that best encapsulates the golden era Pokemon on the handheld systems. Whether you're a seasoned Pokemon veteran or a newcomer, Pokemon Emerald is a polished, addictive RPG that remains essential for the GBA library, and yes, I have played that thing to absolute death. At number 5, Golden Sun. Yeah, Golden Sun at only number 5, calm down everyone, I know probably a lot of people would have had it a lot higher. Released in 2001 by Camelot Software Planning and published by Nintendo, Golden Sun was an ambitious attempt to bring console-style RPGs to the Game Boy Advance. It was developed by many of the same minds behind the Shining Force series and became one of the system's most critically acclaimed titles. Its rich visuals, sweeping score, and the original mechanics quickly earned it the reputation as a modern classic. The game follows Isaac, a young adept from the village of Vale, who embarks on a quest to stop two mysterious warriors from unleashing elemental forces by lighting ancient beacons. Alongside his friends Garrett and Ivan, Isaac explores a world steeped in mysticism, ancient technology, and elemental magic called Psi-Energy. The game's story, while simple at first, gradually reveals a deeper lore connected to forgotten civilizations, philosophical debates on the nature of power, and the responsibilities of heroism. One of Golden Sun's defining features is its synergy system, essentially a form of elemental magic tied to 4 classical elements: earth, fire, wind, and water. Sounds like it's going to go into Captain Planet. Unlike typical RPG spells, synergy is also used in exploration, letting players solve environmental puzzles like moving objects, freezing water, or lighting torches. This made dungeons feel like Zelda-ish puzzle boxes instead of just combat arenas, setting the game apart. Combat is turn-based and heavily customizable thanks to the Dijin system. Is it Dijin? I've always said Dijin. These elemental spirits can be found, assigned to characters, and used in battle to cast spells, summon powerful deities, or change a character's class. But that's the one thing I never thought they explained very well. Basically, if you've got different Dijins and you combine them, so say you give Isaac 3 fire Dijins and 3 earth Dijins, he gets a new class. But you can't tell by his appearance, but his stats and the moves he can use do change. They don't explain it very well, and you definitely need a guidebook if you're going to be able to do that. You need that guidebook because the number and combination of Dinjin affect character stats, making the system a fusion of Pokemon-like collection with Final Fantasy-style tactics. Visually, Golden Sun pushed the GBA to its limits. It used pre-rendered backgrounds, animated spell effects, and pseudo-3D graphics to create what was a look far beyond what most handheld games offered at the time. Summons in particular were dazzling, with multi-screen elemental explosions that became a signature of the franchise, and at some points the game just can't cope with the consoles melting in my hand going, "Ah, kill me now!" The game's soundtrack is also amazing, creating memorable themes for towns, battles, and major story moments. The musical enhanced the grandeur of the world and reflected the emotional weight of the adventure. Even with the GBA's limited audio hardware, the music became across as epic and atmospheric. Upon release, Golden Sun received universal acclaim for its polish, complexity, and technical achievements. It was frequently compared to SNES classics like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VI, despite being a handheld game. Fans and critics alike praised engaging puzzles, strategic combat, and long playtime. It is a long game. The game's legacy is one of enduring admiration. It then spawned a direct sequel, Golden Sun: The Lost Age, which picked up the story from a new perspective and allowed players to link the two games. Well, we should say that. When you finish Golden Sun, you're like, hang on, what? That can't be where the story ends. Because it does. You finish 2 of the towers, and then you're like, eh? What? What? It just ends? Yes, it does. It just ends, because the story continues in the next one. At the time, I didn't know that. I was a child, and I never played the next one. So I'm like, crap. So the next one's not on the list, because I've not played it yet, because I could not afford it as a child. So, yes, and I don't know where my original Golden Sun file is, so I don't know if I'll ever finish this story. Now, whilst the series went dormant after a DS follow-up, demand for a continuation remains high, with Golden Sun still frequently requested on Nintendo's Virtual Console services, and weren't we all happy when they both arrived? Golden Sun wasn't just good for a handheld RPG, it was a testament to what portable gaming could aspire to be. With its blend of exploration, story, strategy, and presentation, it remains one of the crown jewels in the GBA library. And number 4, Fire Emblem: The Sacred Stones. Released in 2004, Fire Emblem: The Sacred Stones was the second game in the series to make its way outside Japan. Following the success of the previous GBA title, just called Fire Emblem, although that's not what it's actually called in Japan, but this game introduced a standalone story set in the continent of Magvel. It combined all the tactical depth fans expected with several fresh ideas that help it stand out in the franchise. The narrative follows Erika and Ephraim, that's how I've always pronounced it, twin royals of Renais, they're definitely fucking, whose kingdom falls to an unexpected invasion. As they struggle to restore peace, they uncover a plot involving ancient monsters, demonic forces, and shattered sacred relics. The dual protagonist structure allowed for 2 distinct campaign paths, depending on which sibling the player chose to follow. The Sacred Stones stuck to the franchise's trademark tactical gameplay, but with a few notable tweaks. It introduced a class branching system, giving players choices when promoting their units. This not only added customization, but also replayability, because now you can decide which units you want to use, and do you want to use them again at the same time with a different class, and which siblings you want to follow. And because of this meant that players could really sculpt their armies to match their preferred strategy. One of its biggest shifts was the introduction of the Tower of Valny and the Ruins of Lagdo. They were optional dungeon-style maps where players could grind levels, gain loot, and train underused characters. This alleviated some of the franchise's typical difficulty spikes and made the game more accessible for newcomers. Visually, the game featured beautiful sprite work, expressive battle animations, and detailed map layouts. Critical hits remained as flashy and satisfying as ever because you are so happy if you get a critical hit in this game, and the new monster enemies gave battles a dark, gothic twist that contrasted with the bright, fancy aesthetic. The soundtrack offered stirring melodies and tense battle themes. While it's not as bombastic as other RPG scores, it was effective at underscoring the game's emotional moments and its themes of loss, courage, and duty. And the fact those twins are definitely fucking each other. Critically, The Sacred Stone was well received, though some long-time fans considered it easier than previous entries. Still, it added flexibility and narrative depth earned it respect, especially among players who appreciated story and character-driven RPGs. Over time, it's been recognised as one of the most unique Fire Emblem entries, especially because it deviated from the larger series lore and told a self-contained tale. Fire Emblem: The Sacred Stones managed to balance accessibility with tactical depth and stands as one of the finest turn-based RPGs available on the GBA. It remains a perfect entry point for newcomers and a rewarding adventure for veterans alike. In at number 3, Final Fantasy VI Advance. Now, I know what some of you are going to be thinking, hang on, Final Fantasy VI is a Super Nintendo game. Yes, it is. But this was the GBA version, and for a lot of people, including myself, this was actually one of the first legitimate ways. I know there was the PlayStation version, but for me, this was one of the most legitimate and best ways I could play the game. I did play the PlayStation version when it first came out. But this for me, and probably for a lot of other people, was one of the best ways to enjoy that game, so I'm putting it as my number 3. You want to argue with me, fight me in the comments and I will come get you. Final Fantasy VI Advance brought one of the most beloved entries in the series to the handheld world, faithfully adapting the 1994 Super Nintendo Classic for a new generation. Released in 2006, it was one of the last GBA Final Fantasy ports and arguably the most ambitious. While the original game was already a landmark RPG known for its storytelling, characters, and emotional depth, this advanced version introduced enhancements that made it more accessible without compromising its legacy. Set in a world where magic has been lost and steam technology reigns, Final Fantasy VI tells a sprawling tale of rebellion, identity, and redemption. Players begin with Terra, a mysterious woman with amnesia and magical abilities, and soon gather a large ensemble of cast of over a dozen playable characters. The narrative weaves between their personal struggles and the looming threat of possibly one of the greatest bad guys ever in video game history, Kefka, an unhinged antagonist who ultimately succeeds in reshaping the world in one of the boldest mid-game twists in RPG history. Yes, that is still one of the best things ever in a video game, and I never had that spoiled for me, and I'm sorry if I've spoiled it here, I'm sorry, but when I played it as a kid, my mind just blew up. I was like, holy Christ, did the bad guy win? Yes, he did, for a period, but he still messed the world up. The advanced version improved upon the original by introducing a more accurate and polished English script, fixing many of the localization issues that plagued the Super Nintendo version. It also added a few new dungeons, powerful enemies, and a music player, but these features made the exploration and completionism more rewarding. The additions also gave longtime fans a reason to revisit the classic, while offering newcomers the definitive portable experience. Combat still remains rooted in the series' active time battle system, but offered unique mechanics for each character. Sabin's Blitz inputs, Cyan's Bushido gauge, Gao's rages, and Realm's sketch ability encouraged experimentation and tactical thinking. This diversity made the large cast feel purposeful, with every character offering their own flavour to battles, adding layers of replayability. The visual presentation retained the charm of the original while making subtle enhancements to clarity and colour balance. Though limited by the GBA hardware, the sprites remained expressive, and the varied environments from imperial cities to underwater ruins and post-apocalyptic landscapes carried a distinct beauty. The orchestral style soundtrack composed by Nobuo Uematsu was adapted impressively, even with the GBA's audio constraints. Critically, Final Fantasy VI Advance was lauded for its facial adaptation and additional content. Many reviewers praised it as one of the greatest RPGs on any system, not just the GBA. The port became a must-have for handheld enthusiasts, like myself, and helped maintain the title's relevancy in a rapidly evolving RPG landscape. Its legacy continues to thrive, influencing modern RPGs with mature narrative structure, ensemble storytelling, and bold pacing choices. Few games, especially from the 16-bit era, attempted such emotional weight and character diversity, and fewer still succeeded as gracefully. Final Fantasy VI itself is often seen as the moment the series matured, and the advanced version ensured its greatness was endured. Whether you experience it for the first time on the GBA or return to an old favourite, Final Fantasy VI Advance served as a love letter to classic RPG design and as a gateway to one of the most powerful narratives in gaming. At number 2, Pokemon FireRed and LeafGreen. Yes, Pokemon's coming back again. I love Pokemon. For those who don't know, I was at one point one of the best in the world at Pokemon. Back in the black and white era, Generation 5, I was one of the best in the UK. When it came to the UK Championship, at the time, I was number 2 online for double battles. I ended up reaching the top 16, which I was really proud of, but I was beaten by the overall winner of the competition. But then he was banned for allegedly throwing poo in his hotel room. Yeah, that was the allegation. Throwing poo in a hotel room. But that's a side story. Let's get back to this one. Pokemon FireRed and LeafGreen weren't just remakes, they were rebirths. Released in 2004, these games brought the original Red and Blue versions to the modern era, combining nostalgia with GBA and hero enhancements to create one of the most successful reimaginings in handheld gaming. And I'm a Gen 1er, so playing a remake of one of my most favourite games of all time for me was nothing short of brilliant. Built using the engine of Generation 3 for Ruby, Sapphire and Emerald, FireRed and LeafGreen presented a familiar Kanto region but with sharper graphics, refined mechanics and new post-game content. The core story remained unchanged. Players take on the role of a young Pokemon trainer venturing across Kanto, battling gym leaders, stopping Team Rocket and aiming to become the Pokemon League champion. What transformed the experience, however, was how much smoother and how much more intuitive the journey felt. Menus were cleaner, inventory management was improved, and the pacing benefited greatly from the GBA's technical enhancements. One of the standout additions was the Sevi Islands, 7 post-game locations that expanded the adventure beyond Kanto. These areas introduced new side quests, unique Pokemon, and even served as a bridge to other generations by offering Pokemon not previously available in the original versions. This extra content added value and gave veterans new terrain to explore. Visually, FireRed and LeafGreen was crisp and colourful, a huge leap from their original Game Boy counterparts. Animations were fluid, sprite design with more details, and towns and routes were reimagined with a brighter palette. The soundtrack preserved the catchy compositions while giving them a refreshed sound thanks to the GBA's audio capabilities. These games also featured new competitive dynamics to the table. With the wireless adapter bundled in, players could now trade and battle more easily without relying on link cables. This accessibility added to the social dimension of Pokemon, encouraging schoolyard trades and competitions in a way the originals couldn't replicate. The upgraded features also meant that FireRed and LeafGreen became essential tools for competitive players looking to raise perfectly trained Pokemon. In addition, FireRed and LeafGreen introduced the concept of the Fame Checker, a minor feature but one that added additional lore and insights into the Kanto region's characters. These small touches gave returning players something to enjoy while still being approachable for newcomers. The game's meticulous balance of nostalgia and innovation was a masterclass in respectful remastering. The popularity persisted for years, with FireRed and LeafGreen becoming some of the most traded and referenced titles in the community. Their accessibility made them ideal gateway entries into the franchise, especially for players who skipped the original Game Boy generation. They also laid the groundwork for future remakes by proving that reinventions could just be as beloved as the originals. Today, many fans still return to these games thanks to their timeless structure, tight progression, and deeply familiar world. They serve as a bridge between generations of players, honouring the series' roots while paving the way for more modern titles. Whether you grew up with the originals or started with these remakes, hopefully not the Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu versions, FireRed and LeafGreen offered a perfect blend of retro and new. Their influence cannot be seen just in Pokemon, but in how game developers approach remakes across the industry. These titles demonstrated that honouring the past while embracing modern sensibilities was not only possible, but it could be wildly successful. And at number 1, and in my opinion the greatest RPG on the GBA, is Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. And I don't care what anyone says, I love this game. I love this game to bits. It is literally the holy grail for me on the GBA. Because Final Fantasy Tactics Advance took the complex political-driven mechanics of its PlayStation predecessor and threw them in the bin, repackaged them into a colourful, accessible tactical RPG for the GBA. Released in 2003, the game introduced players to the fantasy world of Inverleith through the eyes of Marsh, a young boy transported there by a magical book. What follows is actually quite a rich exploration of escapism, consequence, and personal growth, wrapped in deep turn-based strategy. It may look cartoony, but it actually does have quite a deep plot. The gameplay centers on building and managing a clan of warriors across dozens of job classes. I originally called my clan Wing, because I was hooked on Gundam Wing at the time. From classic roles like Knights and Black Mages to more unique ones like Assassins and Beastmasters, the class system offered tremendous flexibility. Players could mix and match abilities between jobs, allowing for custom-built units tailored to specific strategies. It wasn't about just power, it was about synergy. But what it was about was getting the ninja as quick as you can to get dual wield, and then make sure your soldier has it, and then just annihilate things. One of the game's most distinctive mechanics was the judge system, where random laws were imposed in each battle. Now, I didn't mind the judge system. I like the judge system. I think it's cool, I think it's unique, but a lot of other people do not like this system, and that's fine, because it's very controversial. The judge would come out and give specific bans on actions like you can't heal something or you can't use swords, so players might have to adapt their strategy because they can't do what they normally do. The reason why this was controversial was because this added unpredictability and encouraged experimentation with underused tactics and team composition. So sometimes you have to use units you've not used for a while and people are like, they're rubbish and weak. Because you've got to do that, because if you break the rules, you get a warning, which is a yellow card. Get a red card, you're sent to prison. And that ain't good because they're out of the battle. The visual design embraced a more vibrant and chibi aesthetic compared to its PlayStation cousin, which went dark at some points. Very, very dark. But this style worked beautifully on the GBA screen. Maps were varied and detailed, with terrain height and layout influencing tactical decisions. The soundtrack elevated the fantasy atmosphere with elegant orchestration and dynamic battle themes. Like, honestly, I've played this. Honestly, I couldn't believe what was coming out of the GBA. I was like, this is a GBA? What? This soundtrack's incredible! In terms of replayability, the game's a juggernaut. Completing all 300 plus missions, yep, did them all, could take over 100 hours, yep, definitely will. And with secret classes and rare loot, few GBA games offered this much bang for your buck. Many fans replayed the game to experiment with different team compositions, races, and challenge run. Yeah, because there are loads of different units and each one have their own class, and as long as you don't use Mont Blanc, because I hate Mont Blanc and he can die, I really don't like that thing, everyone else is great. Culturally, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance helped bridge a gap between casual RPG fans and hardcore strategy veterans. It simplified systems enough to appeal to newcomers without abandoning the mechanical depth that long-time fans craved. Its success in the GBA also helped pave the way for Tactics Ogre to find new life on new handhelds. To this day, Tactics Advance has a loyal fan base, me, and is often cited in debates about the best tactics game and RPGs ever made. Yes, it is. It showed that deep gameplay and meaningful storytelling weren't exclusive to consoles, and it was possible to have at the palm of your hand. Whether you were fine-tuning a perfect strategy or wrestling with the moral question about identity and illusion, Final Fantasy Tactics gave you a world worth returning to again and again. Now, I know we just had the news that Final Fantasy Tactics will be coming out soon as a remaster, and it gives me hope that one day we're either going to get this as a remaster or released on the Nintendo Switch Online, because if that ever happens, my dick's going to pop off. Now, I did want to insert a scene here from South Park where a scientist ate a concentrated shot of gluten and his dick popped off, but I couldn't do that because I know if I included that, Paramount would copyright strike this to the ground. So you're just going to have to believe that my dick will pop off, and if you suddenly see one in the sky, you know it's because Final Fantasy Tactics has been re-released. There we go, there's an image for you all to take home with. And that is why this... What a way to finish this video. I don't care. I'm crass, I'm horrible, but that's how I do it. This is my channel, and it's stupidity beyond belief. Final Fantasy Tactics Advance is one of my favourite games of all time, so it was always going to win this list, and I'm going to have to take it out of my top list if I ever do a best GBA games, because that'll be an ultimate spoiler, won't it? But for now, that is my top 7 RPGs for the GBA. As I said at the beginning of the video, I want to hear what your top RPGs are for the GBA. And please don't forget, if you think I deserve it, hit that like and subscribe button for more content, and I'll see you all in 3 days' time for more videos. My name's been Danny, take care of yourself, bye bye.